Hey everybody, today I want to talk about an album by Ringo Starr, who is probably one of the most overlooked members of the Beatles. Well, not probably, he's definitely the most overlooked member of the Beatles, especially on my website, newlymeetsvinyl.com. In fact, this album I'm about to talk about is the very first Ringo album to appear on my website. And it is this album by Sir Ringo Starr, Goodnight Vienna. This is an album by Ringo that was released in 1974. Now, Ringo, for his solo career, this is officially his fourth solo album, but really it's his second rock record is what I would call it. Because the first one was called Sentimental Journey. It was just a covers album of like old standards that his mom used to like. And then the second album he made is just like a country album with all kind of country songs, nothing that Ringo had written himself. And then, of course, he put out what I consider his first really true rock solo album, just titled Ringo. And that was a really, really big hit, produced by Richard Perry, with contributions from all of the former Beatles, John, Paul, and George. And then after that, he released this album, Goodnight Vienna. Now, this is one of my favorite Ringo solo albums, and I'm sure a lot of you out there are going, wait a second, did Brian really sit and listen to many, many different pressings of Goodnight Vienna? The answer is yes, I did. I like this album a whole lot. To me, while I love, there goes a motorcycle whizzing by, we'll wait for them. Be on your way, sir. Okay, they're gone. So, while I love the Ringo album, I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think this album, Goodnight Vienna, gets overlooked way too much. Because in my opinion, this is very, very close as far as quality to the Ringo album. And this album has one of my favorite John Lennon songs from the 1970s. And it is the title track, Goodnight Vienna. I just love that song. It gets in my head all the time. And the recording on this album of Goodnight Vienna is fantastic. Also, John Lennon recorded a demo of Goodnight Vienna that he recorded during the Walls and Bridges sessions, and you can actually listen to that on the John Lennon anthology. So I'm sure you can go on YouTube here and find that recording. It's also worth checking out for sure. But this album, besides having John Lennon on it, it also has Harry Nilsson, who I'm sure a lot of you know is one of my favorite artists. It has Dr. John. It has Robbie Robertson from the band. It has Klaus Voormann on bass, who, of course, Klaus Voormann designed the Revolver album cover. He also played bass on John Lennon's solo material and George Harrison's solo material. So this album basically is just packed full of amazing, amazing musicians who are all contributing to Ringo's record. And by the way, again, this is also produced by Richard Perry, who produced Ringo's other album, which is titled Ringo. And this happens to be a U.S. pressing, but this was a sealed copy that I opened up myself to listen to, and it just happened to be the best-sounding one of all the different ones that I listened to. I listened to UK pressings, I listened to a German pressing of this, and the U.S. pressings all, in my opinion, are far superior to the UK and the German pressings. And that would make sense because almost all of this album was recorded in the U.S. So it makes sense that, of course, that the best-sounding pressings would be U.S. pressings. Now, of course, that's not always the case with some records. Sometimes a record could be made in the U.K. and the German pressing is better than the U.K. pressing. It always varies. But for this one, that statement is a true statement. Now, this record was released on Apple Records, and it's got its own unique label. And like I said, this is right out of the shrink wrap, so this is in definitely near mint condition, and it just has a excellent sound quality to it. It really, really rocks is how I would describe it, especially the very first song, Goodnight Vienna. You get a count in from John Lennon, and then John's playing piano, and it just has that Beatle magic. That's all I can say. For some reason, when you get two Beatles together, it always sounds like a Beatles song because there's two Beatles on it. And when you got John on piano and Ringo on drums, it's just going to have that magic, and it definitely has that on this song. Now, that's not to say that there are not other great songs on here as well, because there are. In fact, there's a song that Elton John and Bernie Taupin wrote for Ringo called Snookeroo, which is excellent. There's also a song on side 2 that I love called Only You, which is a cover song that John Lennon suggested to Ringo that he should do. It's an old 50s song. And John actually helped record the backing track and even did a guide vocal for Ringo to sing to. That is also, you can find John Lennon's version of Only You on the John Lennon Anthology, worth checking out. But on here, Ringo really does it excellent on this pressing. Actually on this record, but also on this pressing, it sounds phenomenal. It's got like a sparkly, shimmery quality to it. Very, very, very cool. Also on this album was a kind of a hit called the No No Song, which is pretty funny to hear because obviously during this time period, Ringo was majorly into drinking and drugs, and the song is talking about how the singer is going to stop doing drugs and stop drinking and stop going out all night with his friends. But oddly enough, at the end of the song, you can hear Ringo and Harry Nilsson talking and saying like, "Let's have another one," like that kind of thing. So it's just kind of a bit of a party going on in the recording studio, as you can hear on this. And also, the last song I want to mention that I think is excellent on this is a song called Easy on Me, which is a song that was written by Harry Nilsson that Ringo does on here, and that's also fantastic. So I just love this album, think it's really, really great. And if you want to add it to your collection, go to my website, needlemeetsvinyl.com, because Ringo needs some love, and this is one of his best, in my opinion. That being said, I also want to talk about, I have a bunch of other solo Beatles albums on my website right now, and you should check all of them out. I want to go over them really quickly. I have Paul McCartney's first album, McCartney. This is a UK pressing. Sounds absolutely beautiful. I have Paul McCartney's album, Red Rose Speedway. This is also a UK pressing, and it also is a brilliant listening experience. This album, in my opinion, is majorly underloved. It's a really great record by Wings, and I've always been a big fan of it. So this is Red Rose Speedway, early UK pressing. Check that out on the website. And then this is Wings' album, London Town. This is also a UK pressing, and it sounds really nice. Most of this album was recorded actually on a bunch of yachts that Paul McCartney rented, and they went to the Virgin Islands and were just kind of floating around there, and they turned one of the yachts into a recording studio. And then, of course, they later on went back to Abbey Road and finished adding some overdubs. But this is a very interesting Wings album, and in my opinion, it's a very good Wings album. And if you haven't heard it, it's got a lot of excellent songs, really beautiful Paul McCartney melodies, and just a very cool album to own. So this is London Town by Wings. And the last McCartney record that I have on the website is McCartney 2. Now, this is a very experimental record. It's got like a new wave sound to it, and Paul McCartney is doing everything on this. He recorded it all in his house, and it's just a very quirky but very cool, very fun album to put on if you're having like a party or something like that. It's got a lot of upbeat, kind of dancey songs, and it famously has the song Coming Up on here, which when John Lennon heard it, it made John Lennon want to make another record and start writing music again. So this is a very cool record. And this, by the way, is also a British pressing, and it's a very early copy. In fact, this happens to be a promo copy. So this is a very awesome record. And speaking of John Lennon, I have this very cool live piece in Toronto record, and this is a German pressing, and it is absolutely pristine, has beautiful sound. If you've never heard this John Lennon performance from 1969's Toronto, I think what was the Toronto, live piece in Toronto, excellent recording. It sounds great. Yes, on side 2 there are 2 Yoko Ono jams, and I'm not going to get into that. I actually personally like them. I think they're kind of fun and kind of crazy and cool. But if you don't like it, just listen to side 1. So John Lennon, live piece in Toronto, the Plastic Ono Band. A very cool record. And of course, let's not forget George. We have 2 George records on the website, including his amazing album, All Things Must Pass. This is a UK pressing. Absolutely brilliant. This is the best way to listen to All Things Must Pass on vinyl. this pressing. So check that out. I know I've talked about this one a lot, but it's still up there and worth checking out. And last but not least, this is a album by George that, in my opinion, gets majorly overlooked, but it's a very good one. This is George Harrison's album, Somewhere in England, and just a fantastic sounding record, and it's got a bunch of great songs that are majorly overlooked. The big song on here is, of course, the song All Those Years Ago, which is George's tribute to John Lennon, and it features Ringo on drums, Paul and Linda McCartney on backing vocals, and it was produced by George Martin and engineered by Jeff Emmerich. So you had the whole Beatle team working on that song. So a very, very cool song. So lots of solo Beatles albums currently on the website. So make sure to head on over to needlemeetsvinyl.com. Check all these out. As usual, they all have write-ups that I've written about each one. So you get a little back history and you can get an insight as to why I think these pressings are the best ones. See if I can line these all up without having them fall over. And of course, the main attraction of this video, Ringo's brilliant 1974 album, Goodnight Vienna, also on the website. So check out all these solo Beatle records and stay tuned for more records because I'm finding them, I'm listening to them, and I'm posting them to the website. So stay tuned. Bye for now.